She shouldn't be allowed near a boardroom, let alone a baby. Those were the first words I heard as I stepped into the glass-paneled conference room of Evelyn Teka's downtown Charlotte office. My heels clicked against the polished concrete floor, echoing in the kind of awkward silence that only happens when someone is being talked about, and then walks in. There she stood, Evelyn Archer, my mother-in-law, poised in her signature blood-red blazer, hair swept into a tight bun, sipping from her oat milk latte like she had every right to be there. She wasn't an employee. She wasn't even invited. But she didn't need an invitation. Evelyn was the kind of woman who carried her privilege like a birthright, who walked into rooms she wasn't welcome in and somehow made people apologize for not holding the door open sooner. I stood motionless for a beat, my mind struggling to make sense of what I was hearing. My boss, Lyle, looked up at me from the head of the table, his expression unreadable. The company's general counsel sat next to him. Sir. 2 people from compliance. A legal pad in front of each of them. This wasn't a routine check-in. Camille, Lyle began carefully, gesturing toward the empty seat across from him. We just received a very serious concern brought to us by Mrs. Archer. Evelyn, she interrupted sweetly. Please. Call me Evelyn. Her southern accent was buttered and warm, like molasses over poison. She turned her head toward me slowly, with a look of calculated innocence. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, she said, dabbing the corner of her mouth with a monogrammed napkin she had somehow brought from home. But I couldn't stay silent any longer. I love my grandson. And I worry. The room fell into a still, uncomfortable silence. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I was too stunned to even sit down. She had gone through with it. She was actually doing it. The last 3 months. Every passive-aggressive comment, every manipulated conversation with my husband, every moment she had inserted herself into our parenting decisions, it had all led to this. And I had seen it coming. Just not soon enough. Lyle cleared his throat. Evelyn tells us she found your son, your 2-year-old son, left alone in your office after hours while you were allegedly in a meeting. She says your husband arrived to pick you up and found the child in the dark. Crying. I finally found my voice. He wasn't alone, I said carefully. My assistant was there. The door was open. It was 15 minutes. Evelyn raised a perfectly sculpted brow. 15 minutes is all it takes for a tragedy. There was the performance. The faux-concerned matriarch act that had fooled an entire neighborhood HOA and at least one state senator. But I wasn't falling for it. Not again. And I could see something else behind her carefully practiced eyes. Something colder. Calculating. Vindictive. She wasn't just here to stir concern. She wanted me gone. Fired. Humiliated. Replaced. Lyle glanced at the legal pad in front of him, his jaw tightening. There are photos. Camera footage. Evelyn says she submitted them anonymously last week, but has now come forward in person because I couldn't bear the guilt if something had happened to him, Evelyn interrupted again, clasping her hands dramatically. I lost my own daughter to postpartum carelessness. I won't lose another child. A hush fell over the room. Lyle's lips parted slightly, clearly thrown by the implication. My stomach twisted. Her daughter, my husband's sister, had died in a car accident. Drunk driving. Evelyn had spent years rewriting the story into something softer. Something that made her the tragic, grieving mother instead of a woman who had ignored every warning sign. Now she was using it. Twisting it. Weaponizing it against me. I finally stepped forward, slow and measured, placing my briefcase on the chair without sitting down. If this is a disciplinary meeting, I said, locking eyes with Lyle, I want to know if I'm being accused of anything formally. We haven't reached that stage, he replied quickly. This is a fact-finding meeting. Evelyn folded her arms and tilted her head. Well, the facts are fairly clear. I looked around the room, for people I'd worked with for nearly 7 years. I had built teams, launched partnerships, brought in 8-figure contracts. I was up for a promotion that Evelyn's son, my husband, didn't even know about yet. And she was trying to burn it all down. For what? Control? Jealousy? Or maybe something worse? I swallowed hard, steadying my breath. Then let's find all the facts. Because what Evelyn didn't know was that I had backup. I had evidence. And if she wanted to play dirty, she had just walked into the wrong war room. 3 months earlier I would have sworn Evelyn liked me. We had wine together on Thursdays. She gave me unsolicited parenting advice with the gentle aggression of a Southern belle. She even watched our son Elijah on the rare weekends Lucas and I both had late meetings. She called me sweetheart, complimented my lemon bars, and told everyone at church I was a strong working woman. It was all a lie. Or maybe worse, it was real at first. Until I became something she couldn't control. Evelyn wasn't the type to rage or scream. She destroyed from the inside. Quietly. Elegantly. The kind of woman who smiled while handing you a glass of sweet tea, after already loosening the screws on your porch railing. The shift began when Lucas and I started talking about moving out of Charlotte. It was a casual conversation. A bigger house closer to my office. Better schools for Elijah. But Evelyn took it personally. You don't need more space, she had said, sipping tea in our backyard. You just need to slow down. Be a mother first. I laughed, thinking it was just her usual passive-aggressive shtick. I didn't realize she was planting the first seeds. Lucas and I had been married for 6 years. We were good on paper. Two professionals, high-income, ambitious, aligned on most things. But lately, cracks had started to show. I worked long hours. He resented my schedule. I resented that he resented it. And Evelyn, she saw all of it. She saw her opening. It started small. Subtle. She'd make comments when Lucas wasn't around. Elijah seems anxious lately. Do you think it's the nanny? Or worse? Do you think maybe he just misses his mommy? She'd tidy up while watching him and leave small corrections in her wake. A rearranged medicine cabinet. A note taped to the fridge. Juice has too much sugar, sweetheart. Then came the email. At first, I didn't even realize it had come from her. An anonymous tip sent to HR, alleging concerns about Camille Archer's behavior after hours. It was vague, just enough to trigger a review. I brought it up over coffee one morning. Probably nothing, he'd said, flipping open his laptop. Just someone trying to stir the pot. I remember brushing it off. Smiling. Joking even. But that night when I came home and saw Evelyn's car in the driveway uninvited, I felt something cold settle in my chest. She was in the kitchen feeding Elijah mashed bananas, acting like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stopped by because the sitter looked overwhelmed, she said, smiling wide. I thought I'd lend a hand. Lucas didn't question it. Why would he? It was his mother helping out. That's when I knew. She wasn't helping. He was watching. Studying. Looking for leverage. It only escalated from there. She started showing up at the office. Just dropping off lunch, she'd say, smiling at the receptionist. Once I caught her walking the hallway near my private suite. I was looking for the restroom, she said innocently. There was one right by the lobby. Another time I overheard her talking to one of our clients at a networking gala. Spinning some thinly veiled narrative about how hard it must be for young moms in corporate America, especially those who struggle with balance. By the time the HR meeting came around, I had already begun collecting everything. Security footage. Text messages. Calendar logs. I had spent the last 2 weeks building a digital paper trail so detailed it would make a federal prosecutor weep. But even then, I wasn't ready for the depth of her manipulation. Because this wasn't just about me. Evelyn wanted custody. Not full custody. Not legally, at least. She wanted influence. She wanted to make Lucas believe I was unfit, slowly, subtly, until one day he'd say, maybe Mom should take Elijah more often. Just until things settled down at work. She was playing the long game. But I had learned to play it longer. And if she wanted to turn my life into a war, then she was about to find out just how brutal I could be when cornered. I didn't go home after that HR meeting. I went straight to the storage level of the parking garage, 3rd floor down where the lights flicker just enough to make you question your eyes, and I sat in my car with the engine off and the windows cracked. The city hummed above me like a restless animal. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was calculating. For the first time in weeks I felt calm. She had made her move. Bold. Public. Sloppy. Evelyn always assumed she was the smartest woman in any room. But this time she'd underestimated 2 things. My memory, and my tolerance for humiliation. The first thing I did was open the folder on my encrypted drive labeled Pineapple. It was a joke between me and my old roommate from college. An emergency file for professional insurance. I had used it to store sensitive client records just in case. But now it held something more personal. Photos. Emails. Footage. All of it timestamped. Corroborated. I had everything. From the day Evelyn first set foot in my office without clearance, to a screen recording of the anonymous email sent to H. From a masked IP that I traced to her own kitchen router. I had audio too. 3 weeks earlier, I'd left my phone recording in the coat pocket of my son's stroller during one of Evelyn's unsolicited drop-ins. She had no idea. That day she spent 42 minutes in my kitchen, alternating between telling my son that, "Mommy's just really tired lately," and calling Lucas to suggest I take a leave of absence. "I don't want to overstep," she had whispered into the phone, "but Camille's energy has changed. Don't you think she's unraveling a little?" Unraveling. That word clung to me like smoke. But what Evelyn didn't know, couldn't even imagine, was that I wasn't unraveling. I was knitting a noose. And now it was time to tighten it. The first thread I pulled was Lucas. He was the emotional wild card in all of this. Smart, yes. Loving when he wasn't tired. But blind when it came to his mother. Evelyn had spent years wrapping herself around his spine like ivy, whispering about loyalty and legacy, turning every boundary into a personal insult. So I didn't confront him. I didn't accuse her. I just showed him things. Little things. A deleted voicemail from Evelyn's phone I recovered from our joint carrier records. A screenshot of her texting my assistant under the guise of confirming Camille's schedule. A clip of her voice on the baby monitor saying, "Your mommy is very busy saving the world. Maybe you'll come live with grandma one day, Lucas laughed at first. Then he stopped laughing. "What is this?" he asked, scrolling through a folder I'd titled Helpful Notes from Grandma. "I don't know," I said softly. "What do you think it is?" I watched his hands shake. I didn't need to yell. Or cry. Or beg him to believe me. I let her own words do the damage. The second thread I pulled was HR. I called Lyle the next morning and asked for a follow-up meeting with everyone present. I brought my laptop. I brought receipts. I didn't bring Evelyn. This time I ran the meeting. I projected a screen with a heat map of building access logs, highlighting Evelyn's unregistered visits, 4 times in the last 6 weeks. I pulled up time-stamped footage of her entering restricted floors. Then I played the screen recording. The anonymous complaint opened in a Chrome browser window on a device registered to Evelyn's Amazon account, verified by a cookie login that automatically pulled up her Whole Foods shopping cart in the background. And then I played the audio. 42 minutes of passive-aggressive venom disguised as concern. When it ended, no one said a word. Lyle closed his notepad. The general counsel rubbed her temples. One of the compliance officers let out a soft "Jesus Christ." I leaned back in my chair, finally breathing freely. "I'd like a written statement added to my file," I said, clarifying that the accusations were not only false, but intentionally malicious. "And the source?" Lyle asked quietly. "I'll leave that to your judgment," I replied. "But if she ever sets foot in this building again, I'll consider it a breach of workplace safety." They agreed. Quickly. Too quickly. Because everyone in that room suddenly understood. Evelyn hadn't just miscalculated. She had chosen the wrong woman to go to war with. Evelyn didn't find out right away. That was the best part. She still floated around town like nothing had happened, stopping by the church potluck with a rhubarb pie and a too-tight smile, holding Elijah in one arm like a political candidate cradling a baby for a photo op. But the energy had changed. She could feel it. Even if she didn't understand why yet. The first crack appeared during Sunday brunch. Lucas and I had decided to attend, mostly for the sake of normalcy. Evelyn showed up late as always, dressed like she was running for PTA president of the entire state. She kissed both of us on the cheek and complimented my blouse in the same tone one might use to praise a brave little orphan. And then it happened. The pastor's wife, Carolyn McTeer, who never missed anything, walked past our table, paused, and smiled at me just a little too long. "Camille," she said sweetly, "I read something interesting last night. Something about anonymous workplace harassment complaints being traceable. Isn't technology just fascinating these days?" She turned to Evelyn and added, "I suppose you have to be careful what you email on a shared family Wi-Fi, Evelyn's fork froze halfway to her mouth. She recovered fast, smiled even, but I saw it. The flicker of panic behind her eyes. Something was unraveling and she didn't know what thread had been pulled. Lucas didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His silence was heavier than anything I could have thrown across the table. That night she called him 3 times. He didn't pick up. She left a voicemail, voice trembling under the surface. I just want to clear the air. I think Camille has been misinterpreting things. I never meant any harm. We both listened to it on speaker. Neither of us said anything. She called again the next morning, this time me. I let it go to voicemail too. But this time, she didn't sound controlled. She sounded cornered. I didn't need to orchestrate some dramatic confrontation. That's not how real revenge works. I just planted seeds. Quiet ones. Truths left in just the right inboxes. A copy of the building access logs sent, anonymously, to the private group chat of the parent board at Elijah's preschool. Evelyn had been boasting for weeks about picking him up, when Camille couldn't manage, even though she'd never been on the approved list. The footage said otherwise. Then came the article. A feature in a local business magazine profiling Charlotte's corporate women to watch. My name was included, along with a mention, subtle, respectful, about recently overcoming a malicious attempt to sabotage her role by an individual close to the family. No names. But the timing? Impeccable. Evelyn's social circle read that piece like it was gospel. The woman who had once floated on a cloud of well-managed appearances suddenly found herself in rooms full of tight smiles and cold shoulders. She tried to hold court at the next neighborhood association meeting, but no one laughed at her jokes. She posted a recipe on Facebook for nurturing work-life balance as a grandmother, and got exactly 2 likes. One from a emblem consultant and one from a bot account. Her online glow started to dim. Her friends stopped inviting her to lunches, just for daughters-in-law. Even her Instagram, normally curated like a lifestyle blog, became oddly quiet. She had built her world on perception. And I had just let it rot from the inside. No drama. No explosion. Just slow, elegant collapse. And through it all I never once raised my voice. I didn't have to. The truth was louder than anything she could have screamed. It happened on a Tuesday. Not a dramatic Friday evening or a scandalous weekend brunch. Just a gray, uneventful Tuesday morning in the middle of April. The kind of day people forget unless something unforgettable happens. And something unforgettable was about to happen. Evelyn Tech had invited a select group of employees and their families to an internal innovation and culture breakfast. Press was there. Donors. City officials. It was supposed to be polished, wholesome, aspirational. And because Evelyn couldn't resist the scent of prestige, she showed up too. She wasn't invited. She claimed she was just dropping off a folder Lucas forgot, and decided to stay for a bit just to support Camille. She even brought Elijah, dressed in a tiny blazer, using him like a VIP pass. Security let her through. For now. I stood near the buffet table sipping black coffee and watching her from across the atrium, gliding through the room like she owned it. She smiled at the regional VP. Kissed cheeks. Dropped thinly veiled compliments like rose petals at a pageant. It was Evelyn at her best. It was also her final act. Because across the room I saw Lyle nod at me. It was time. I walked up to the stage as the internal comms director handed me the mic for my scheduled segment, Leadership Through Crisis. It was supposed to be a discussion about resilience in the workplace. I planned to give them exactly that. Just not the version they expected. Good morning, I began, calm, clear, measured. I want to talk today about visibility. About how sometimes when people don't understand your role, when they underestimate your work, they assume they're entitled to manipulate your story. The room shifted. Evelyn looked up. I didn't look at her. Not yet. I've spent the last few months navigating what I'll simply call a campaign, I continued, led not by a competitor or a corporate rival, but someone much closer. Someone who believed that if they said enough polished, cutting things behind my back, it would weaken my foundation. Now I looked at her. She was standing still. Eyes locked on mine. Elijah still perched on her hip, squirming slightly. She adjusted her grip and tilted her head, the way she always did when she felt the walls closing in and wanted to look like the victim. This person tried to weaponize my love for my child. My career. My reputation. She submitted fabricated reports. She accessed this building without authorization. She planted stories in conversations with coworkers and clients and even tried to use my own husband against me. A hushed murmur swept the room. I took a small breath and added, "She failed." I reached into my folder and pulled out a short stack of papers. Company policy violations, timestamped access logs, a statement from our legal team. I placed them gently on the podium. "And because we believe in transparency here and accountability," I said, "this information is now part of the official company record. Filed. Reviewed. Closed." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply stated facts, each one like a brick in the quiet wall I had been building. "She has been informed that she is no longer permitted in this building or on our campus," I finished. "And she is no longer welcome to speak on my behalf, or on behalf of my family." Silence. The kind of silence that chokes. Then quietly a single person clapped. Then another. And another. It wasn't a standing ovation. It wasn't dramatic. It was respect. Then Evelyn. She was already halfway to the door. Clutching her handbag. Eyes wide and blinking. Her lipstick too perfect, her exit too fast. Not a single person stopped her. Not even the receptionist who had once called her charming. Security escorted her out as gently as one might remove a wine-stained linen from a gala. Lucas didn't call her that night. Neither did I. There was nothing left to say. The next time I saw Evelyn, she wasn't wearing red. She was dressed in pale gray, almost beige, as if the color had been drained from her life. Her makeup was lighter. Her hair no longer sculpted into that perfect helmet of Southern matriarchy, but pulled loosely at the nape of her neck. We were both invited, technically, to a mutual friend's baby shower. But she didn't stay long. She arrived late, hugged no one, and left halfway through the cake cutting. I didn't approach her. I didn't need to. The entire room had already shifted. No one clung to her compliments. No one turned toward her voice. He wasn't hated. Just faded. That was the real fallout. Not the legal warning. Not the social exile. It was the loss of influence. She had built her identity on quiet power, the illusion of being indispensable. No. She was just a woman who had gone too far. Too proud to apologize. Too exposed to rebuild. Lucas never asked me to forgive her. He didn't defend her. He didn't rush in to smooth things over. He just sat with the truth. We spent quiet nights rebuilding trust, one honest conversation at a time. There were tears, some mine, some his. There were long silences. But there was also relief. Real bone-deep relief. Because the weight of pretending that Evelyn was harmless, that her presence was a blessing, that I was overreacting, was gone. We didn't cut her out completely. We set boundaries. Hard ones. Ones she couldn't cross without consequences. And that was enough. For now. At work things changed too. I didn't get the promotion right away. Not because I didn't deserve it, but because I didn't need it to feel like I had won. I had earned something better. Undeniability. No more questions whispered in closed-door meetings. No more polite doubt behind glossy smiles. People knew exactly who I was, and what I could survive. And the irony? Evelyn's attempt to tear me down became the reason I was finally fully seen. One afternoon months later I found a letter in our mailbox. No return address. The handwriting neat, deliberate. Expensive stationery. A faint scent of rosewater and regret. I knew who it was from before I opened it. It wasn't an apology. Not really. Just a single sentence, written in the elegant penmanship she used for Christmas cards and backhanded compliments. "I hope someday Elijah will understand that I always meant well." I folded the letter once, neatly, and placed it back in the envelope. Then I set it in the drawer where I keep things that no longer have power over me. This wasn't revenge. This was the truth. And the truth, when it lands at the right moment, doesn't need an audience to echo. It just needs silence. And I had earned mine. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It doesn't come with applause or revenge speeches or perfect timing. Sometimes, justice is simply the moment you stop explaining yourself. The moment you walk into a room and no longer shrink to make others comfortable. The moment you know, without anyone needing to say it, that the people who doubted you will never do it again. Evelyn taught me something, though she'll never realize it. She taught me how powerful I am when I don't flinch. When I choose silence over spectacle. Boundaries over battles. And truth over peacekeeping. I don't need her approval. I don't need the world's validation. I have my son. My work. My name. And that's more than enough. Because I didn't just survive what she did to me. I turned it into something that can never be undone.